Captain America dishing out the meatiest right hook this side of the Berlin Wall is exactly the way every hoorah, Nazi-bopping American comic book should start, and no one can tell me otherwise. Captain America Comics #1 has a staggeringly awesome comic book cover that instantly grips even the least patriotic among us. Now obviously I'm not American, as you might be able to pick up from my subtle English undertones, but that won't stop me today from wishing I was snogging the Statue of Liberty and scoffing 17 hamburgers because you, Captain America, make me feel things. This is Captain America Comics #1, the Captain's first comic book appearance, and here's what you can expect throughout this first edition. Captain America winning the creepiest game of chess of all time, the first appearance of the Red Skull, and Bucky being mostly useless for an entire comic book but dressed in the cutest of outfits. We think we know Captain America. We've seen him in 3 of his own movies and star heavily as part of the Avengers and several more. Brave, resilient, and a goody little two-shoes, yes you are, yes you are. Now, I don't hate Captain America by any means. I think he's got some great moments, but sometimes it gets hard to root for the overtly good guy. He's just a little too good sometimes, you know? I like a little bit of flaw in my superheroes, a little bit of childhood trauma, a little bit of law breaking every once in a while, and Steve doesn't have any of that. But wait, what if we don't know him at all? What if the Captain America we know today is completely different? We're going to dive back in time to see what he was like from the very beginning. Welcome back to Comics by Clark. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's America in 1941. War is raging across Europe. Ruthless warmongers from across the Atlantic are threatening the safety of American citizens. It's time for the youth of America to step up and join the fight. The threat isn't just across the water though. Nazis have infiltrated deep into America, bringing with them sabotage and treason, paralysing vital defence industries. In Washington, 2 soldiers report to a higher up. There's no stopping these vermin. They're so deeply entrenched in American intelligence, no one can be trusted. What would you suggest, gentlemen? A character out of comic books? Send in Mr. Grover. In walks the head of the FBI, J. Arthur Gordon. He has a plan that might be of interest. Disguising themselves, the group leave for a shady side of town. They arrive at an antique store, but it is so much more than that. A decrepit old lady readies a gun to shoot the visitors, but puts it back at Gordon's request. The formula's been found, they're waiting for you now. Behind the next door, a state-of-the-art modern laboratory lies. The army officials gasp as the old woman removes her disguise to reveal the astoundingly beautiful X-13, one of the FBI's most trusted agents. Sitting in the observation deck, the officials watch as the experiment is unfurled before their eyes. A skinny young man stands before a doctor, holding a syringe. Don't be afraid, son. You're about to become one of America's saviors. The man starts to change as the doctor speaks to the gallery. This man was once refused by the army service for his weak physical form, but now the serum coursing through his veins has rapidly builded his body and his brain tissue. The once skinny man now stands at a hulking figure next to the scientist, an absolute Adonis. This specimen is due to be the first of a line of super agents created to eradicate Nazi spies. The scientist names him Captain America and places an important mission on him. Just like he has just gained strength, so will America. They will safeguard their shores. Betrayal. One of the officers is a deep undercover spy employed by Hitler's Gestapo. He knows this experiment can't go on. He fires through the glass and shoots the professor dead. The ricochet shatters all of the remaining serums. The experiment is destroyed. Before the gunman can kill anyone else, Captain America punches a hole through the glass, rips him out and pummels him to a pulp. Trying to escape, the gunman is wrapped in wires from the surrounding machines and is electrocuted to death. Although the project is gone, it created the hero the country needed, Captain America. His heroics spread the nation as he thwarts Nazis on home soil across the country. People long to know, who is this Captain America? At Camp Lee of the United States Army, Bucky Barnes, mascot of the regiment, approaches Private Steve Rogers, telling him about Captain America's latest valor. Captain America is his hero, who he'd love so badly to meet. Later that night, Bucky stumbles in on Steve Rogers putting on the Captain America suit. He's shocked and can't believe it, but now he has to hold this important secret. More than that, he has the chance to become Captain America's partner. Now Captain America and Bucky, forming as a team, have to take on the challenge of fighting against the Nazi powers who seek to harm America. Well, where to begin? I think the best part of this origin story is the historical implications of this comic. based on the climate of America in 1940 when this was published. I know, boring history lesson incoming. Not enough flashing lights, dopamine and brain low. Hey, you like reels, right? Here, just pay attention. I'll be quick, I promise. In 1933, Hitler rises to power in Germany, becoming Chancellor, and later assumes dictatorial power. He invades Poland in 1939, causing war to be declared by Britain and France on Nazi Germany. After capturing Poland in 1940, Hitler invades Norway. French and British troops move into Belgium to try and fight the Nazis away from home soil, but get surrounded, resulting in the Battle of Dunkirk. After a decisive defeat at Dunkirk, Paris falls to the Nazis in June of the same year. In the following months, the Blitz begins as German bombers begin to target major cities across Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Across the Atlantic, America started to realise that they needed to do more for the Allies than just providing weaponry, but instead they needed to fight as well. This wasn't lost on the creators Simon and Kirby, who said that Captain America was a consciously political creation. They were morally repulsed by the Nazis and naturally wanted to have their own say. So Captain America sort of poses here as capturing that American spirit, that fight against the evil forces out to the east, or maybe even more so, drumming up a fighting spirit that needed to be created. Steve Rogers isn't named until after his introduction, something slightly unusual perhaps. In fact, Steve isn't special at all. Sorry, Steve. Not only does he have a below or average intelligence and physique, nothing is mentioned of his bravery at all, only that he has been rejected for not being good enough. I can't be certain, but perhaps this comic was able to give the average American hope that they too can be important in the fight against the Nazis, or at least that was its intention. This helps make some other pieces in this comic make sense. Simon and Kirby chose to put the fight on America's doorstep rather than 8,000 kilometers away, where it actually was, to hope to show just how much of a threat the Nazis were to American soil. Simon and Kirby, like Captain America, go on to pull very few punches. Hey boys and girls, it's time for your favourite game show. Let's play a game of Spot the Nazi. Oh look, the most ugly, decrepit man you've ever seen in your entire life, and a man that looks like he's been chiselled out of marble by Michelangelo, one of his other famous turtle brothers. Of course, you can spot the goodie and the baddie. The faces are so striking, it makes you wonder how these spies managed to infiltrate America so easily, and perhaps whether Captain America was needed at all. Perhaps all the American intelligence needed to do was just give them a simple attractiveness test that might have done the trick. Anyway, I digress. So we see a slightly different transformation story to the one we got in the first Captain America movie. Steve gets injured with a singular vial and is immediately transformed into this incredible super agent. The results are similarly enormous though. From an average Joe to hitting like an absolute freight train, the Nazi in question turns into a flailing Magikarp as he pings across 2 panels. The bit that I find most interesting about this story is Private Steve Rogers' relationship with Bucky Barnes. Now, initially I was on edge. There's something a little disconcerting about a boy mascot following around a grown man, but doing some maths, I figured out that Steve is only 3 years older than Bucky. Everyone breathe, it's going to be okay. So Bucky is completely in awe with Captain America. He follows all of his exploits in the headlines and would love so badly to meet him. By sheer chance, he stumbles into Steve's tent while he's putting on his superhero gear, which again we gloss over because I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Seeing him put on that suit, he's in disbelief, and in a snap call, Steve tells Bucky he has to join him. Now that's all fun for the story, but as far as I can tell, Bucky is just this 16-year-old kid with no superpowers at all. Bucky is a complete liability, as we will go on to see. He's powerless and has definitely not even finished growing yet. Yet he now has the opportunity to go on these crazy Nazi thwarting adventures. As ridiculous as that is, and trust me, he goes on to wind me up plenty of times in the next 2 stories alone, I unironically enjoy the fact that Bucky gets to live out his dream and adventure with the Captain. It has a charm to it that I can't help but enjoy. So let's get into our first Captain America adventure. We start Captain and Bucky's first proper adventure with a mystery that needs to be solved. A new double act, Sando and Omar, have started popping up in theatres around America, predicting the future. A psychic named Omar, a dwarfed, peculiar-looking man, sees into the future and predicts a terrible accident at the American Army base, Fort Biggs. This isn't the first time he's done this. This double act has been touring the country, predicting explosions all across America. The scary thing is, all of his predictions come true. Whenever he sees an explosion, just moments later the same tragedy happens. Reading the news, Private Rogers and Bucky suspect that something villainous is afoot and decide to go check it out. Arriving amidst hundreds of excited audience members, Bucky and Cap remain skeptical. The act begins and the mystical Omar once again predicts a tragedy. This time it's the Hilltown Bridge. The bridge, filled with traffic, is doomed to collapse. Eyes lock on the stage. Buck and Cappy slip into their costumes and race to the bridge, but as soon as they go out the doors they hear a thunderous explosion. The bridge explodes in the distance and cars tumble into the water, their drivers meeting a quick fate. The theatre's still buzzing inside, and the duo storms back in and swing onto the stage using a curtain. Whilst Cap grabs Sando and demands answers, Omar scrambles to get away. Cap delivers a knockout blow to Sando and then heads backstage to find Bucky and the Psychic. Met with silence, Cap opens the door to a completely dark room. As he enters, the light flicks on, and Cap is met with a gun pointed straight at him. Of course the Nazis are behind this, and they have the upper hand, with Bucky and a beautiful but familiar girl restrained by two villains. Sando arrives nursing his now swollen jaw, promising the captain that he'll pay for his punch with slow torture. Sando reveals his name is actually Von Kranz, and he's been planning these series of attacks on infrastructure to destroy the morale of Americans all across the US. Speaks up, she's a journalist named Betty Ross. She'd been investigating this ring for the government. Poor Omar is just a tool for the act. The Gestapo had been planning the explosions, and then Von Kranz has been predicting them. Not needing to hear any more, Captain America springs into action, whacking a Nazi to each side of him with his fist and shield. Bucky effortlessly throws one of them over his shoulder, and then Cap finishes him off with a flawless right hook. Von Kranz, sensing defeat and realising there's no escape, goes to enact his villainous last resort. Lighting a bomb, he announces he's going to blast everyone, including himself, to bits. With seconds to spare, Bucky dives across the room, grabbing the bomb and launching it out the window. The bomb explodes mere seconds later. Celebrating a job well done, the superhero duo go to leave. Stopping briefly to tell Miss Ross to look after the Nazis till the FBI arrive. She tries to stop him. She wants him to stay. She wants to thank him. Perhaps some other time. Good night, Miss Ross. And Cap and Bucky escape into the night. Damn. As a staunchly English, Yorkshire tea and Carling running through my veins type bloke, I want to tell you that this American propaganda comic is rubbish, but it's actually not, it's really fun. So what makes it so good? Our first adventure sets the pace for what we should expect from a superhero moving forward, and this one has an immediate payoff. We're told in Cap's origin story that he's been created as a super agent to thwart Nazi villainy on home soil, and his first adventure does exactly that. Moreover, we're actually met with some good, believable villain motivation that draws us into the seriousness of the Nazi threat. Von Kranz reveals he's been setting off these explosions to ruin the morale of Americans all across the US. If he can successfully do that, the Nazis will surely have an advantage, so as a reader, I see this as an actual threat, one that needs fixing. It shows the seriousness to Cap and Bucky's actions, the ramifications for what might have happened if they failed. It's only short, mind you, but these first comics were really long ones, so Simon and Kermie do well to pack in lots of little bits about who this Captain America is in a very short amount of time. We see a little bit of intrigue, a puzzle for Captain America to figure out, a Nazi threat, some shows of power and prowess for Bucky and Cap, and finally, the day being saved by our gallant heroes. Overall, this story is solid. The only thing that irks me a little bit about this comic is the gimmick nature of Sando and Omar's act. Despite being a plot of intrigue, it remains a mystery as to why they deliberately drew attention to themselves. In any case, overall this story is good, and that's not the only reason why it's grown on me. One of those reasons is that the suits are bloody awesome, which gets my nostalgia feelings really tingling. Obviously we get the typical comic book style with bold colours, but I think it's the stars and the red and white stripes that really do it for me. Every shot of Cap and Bucky in costume is such a patriotic visual explosion that it feels like Uncle Sam himself is repeatedly punching me in the face with a Big Mac. And I'm hooked on the sauce, baby. This is what Simon and Kermie promised the reader, and like sexy star-spangled bannered postmen, they've freaking delivered. I expect a formal invitation to become American after this. I like Bucky's outfit in particular. The brightly coloured, oversized swashbuckler boots, thick belt and popping yellow colour. This dude has the audacity to power pose straight at the reader, wearing a crispy charity shop fit, but I can't help but love it. That moves on to another big aspect of this comic in my opinion. I can't help but love Bucky. Bucky is just a random 16-year-old. There's something brilliant about the premise. He's this lonely 16-year-old tagging around an army base, and suddenly he's thrown into the life of undercover agents and superpowers, and he has the chance to start adventuring alongside his hero. Now, yes, he's a bit of a liability, getting himself caught out by the Nazis on more than one occasion. I have to give him some credit, because you best believe that if Captain America picked me at 16, my spotty League of Legends playing self probably wouldn't have been that useful either. But he's not always useless though. He does think something's wrong with the psychic act, and does chase down Omar, and finally hits the sickest buzzer beater bomb throw this side of the Mississippi. I don't really know many other American landmarks, so we're starting to get limited here. So we get our happy ending. The Nazis have lost and it's time for Captain America to leave. I was not prepared for the sheer amount of game the Cap had though. My understanding of Steve was that he was a goody-goody, so perfect that anything aside from the fate of America didn't matter. I didn't know he was capable of flirting, but okay man, I see you. Cap turns the woman down politely with a perhaps some other time. He leaves behind him to quote, a wrecked, aspiring and a puzzled girl. I don't understand who reads this comic and doesn't want to be Captain America for a little bit. Intelligent, strong, and he's got game? Like, fair dues mate, fair dues. Finally, to cap off a pretty brilliant story, if you'll excuse the pun, we see Cap and Bucky disappear into the night. I suppose the only point of interest here is that Steve and Bucky keep their identities a secret. Although that's a standard for superhero comics, it's not the same Cap we know in modern movies. So, can the next story top that one? Let's get into it. We cut to a secluded section of town. A weird figure leans over a chessboard filled with unusual pieces. Figurines of admirals and Nazis populate the board. The peculiar man speaks to the pieces, monologuing his devious plans. Admiral Perkins is a quite capable man, but he is quite inferior to the genius whom holds his figure. The genius known as Rathcone announces that Admiral Perkins must die tonight. Listening through a tannoy in another room, foreign agents hear the orders and go to commit their treason. They ask about the secrecy surrounding Rathcone, but are informed that they won't see his face until he becomes the Führer of the new regime. Coincidentally, Cap and Bucky are attending a speech tonight, headlined by Admiral Perkins. Bucky makes it clear he'd rather not attend, but Steve encourages him that there are things to be learned from such a great leader. The curtain rolls back to see the Admiral centre stage, propped up by a wooden stake, a bullet through his forehead. The crowd turns to bedlam in seconds, demanding the killer be brought to justice. Outside, Bucky spots a figure hurdling a wall in the distance. It's obviously the killer getting away. After a quick costume change, the pair get ready to chase down the man. Cap asks Bucky whether he can handle a man's job. Bucky confidently retorts that he's not a baby. Captain America takes to the rooftops whilst Bucky takes to the streets, prowling through the darkened alleys. Bucky isn't as sneaky as he might have hoped. He's spotted by the lurking killer and is set to walk into a trap. The assassin darts out of the shadows and lunges at Bucky with a knife. He ducks the first knife attack but gets battered with a punch into the corner. Circling in on Bucky, the assassin readies his knife to kill for the second time today. Captain America leaps from the night, spearing the assassin with an immense tackle. One punch and the assassin is incapacitated. Cap grabs him by the throat and demands he talks. As he goes to spill his secrets, the air fills with automatic gunfire, and the Nazi is shot dead in Cap's arms. Blocking the bullets aimed for him and Bucky, the duo take chase after the assailants, but they make off in a car. Whilst they're returning home, Rathcone rubs his hands together and makes another chess move, declaring through the tannoy that this time General Ellsworth must die tonight. They pick Strangler, a monstrously big Nazi, to deal with Ellsworth, and the next step of their devious plan is underway. That same night, back at an army camp, Steve and Bucky are relaxing. They receive a new assignment, special duty at General Ellsworth's house. When they arrive, they go to check in on the General and find him already dead, slumped over on his table with lifeless eyes. The next day, the paper is plastered with reports of the murders of high-ranking officials at the hands of undercover Nazis. Rathcone reads happily, seeing his plan is working. The time is ripe for invasion, Rathcone declares. I'll have the American public begging on their knees. But first, he has one final step before invasion follows. Captain America must be brought to him alive. Once again, Strangler is called to action, tasked with bringing Captain America in alive. He decides to bring in the boy first and hopes Captain America will follow afterwards. Later, back at camp, Bucky is visited by Strangler. He appears at Bucky's tent in an ordinary suit, He says he's just here to talk. He tells Bucky where to find the assassins, but that he has to go alone. Later that night, Bucky approaches a shabby building. When he enters, the door slams behind him. He thinks it's just the wind slamming it. He strolls down some stairs, and he approaches a chessboard with figures resembling him and the captain, and a strange figure he doesn't recognise. Rathcone appears behind him. Surprised, Bucky asks, "Who are you?" The weird figure replies, "My associates call me Rathcone, but one day your country will refer to me as dictator." Bucky realises he's walked into a trap. He goes to run, but is tripped by Rathcone's cane. One massive strike to Bucky's head, and he goes unconscious. Rathcone sets his trap, waiting for the captain to arrive. Looking for Bucky, Cap spies a note on his table. It's from Bucky. He says he's gone off on a hunt in search of the killers at a deserted house on Peak Street. Cap dons his superhero gear and makes his way over there. Entering the building, he begins to make his way down the stairs. He doesn't notice the Nazi getting ready to pounce behind the door. A strangler dives towards the captain, but with ease Captain America dives over the top of him. With a few well-timed punches and a spear tackle, he renders the muscular Nazi completely unconscious. Rathbone swings open a door, revealing Bucky tied to a chair. Captain quips, "Hello Bucky, you rascal, I thought I'd find you here." Bucky is unimpressed, and tells the Cap to finish off Rathcone. But that won't be possible right now. Rathcone has a gun pressed in Cap's back, and orders him to sit down for a game of chess. Cap gazes over the chessboard, and sees figures of himself, Bucky and Rathcone. Rathcone monologues to the duo, declaring that once this board is cleared of them, the Nazis will launch the biggest blitzkrieg the world has ever seen. He symbolically moves to take Captain America's piece, but the captain in a flash whips over the table with a great kick and sparks out the evil genius with a knockout blow. Untying Bucky, they realise that more Nazis will be shortly flooding the room, so they prepare for attack. 4 assassins barrel through the door, knocking it off its hinges. Shouts of "Kill the Yankee swine" ensue as they clutch at their pistols. Acting quickly, Cap grabs the chandelier, slamming it into 2 of the assailants, before rushing to Bucky's aid, who's being held down by 2 other attackers, seconds away from being slashed by a knife. Cap socks him in the face before moving on to the others. Bucky can only look on in wonder as Cap slowly dismantles the rest of the Nazi assassins. Rathcone dashes from the room, but he can't escape the American super agent. The Nazi genius tries to bat him off with a chair, but Cap brushes off the attack and sends him flying with a punch. Bucky calls Cap into the office he's found. As they look through rolls of plans and documents, they start to see Rathcone's plan unfold, finding plans for every military and industrial centre in North and South America. The seriousness of this attack isn't lost on Captain America, as they realise just how serious this could have been for the US had they not foiled Rathcone's plan. Cap, using the landline from the villain's lair, calls the FBI. Yes, that's right, we've got Rathcone and his entire spy ring. They'll wait, they're fast asleep. Cap and Bucky retreat off into the night. The next day, the papers are plastered once again with Captain America and his daring escapades, foiling Nazi saboteurs once again. So, first of all, what can we say about Nazi chess? What the hell is this cover? Rathcone, or as he is affectionately known as Fingernails McChessloser, sporting the Grandpa Joe fingernails. If you know, you know, honestly. The bloke is undeniably harrowing, only made more sinister by the fact that he appears to be playing chess with death itself. Despite the implied cover, this clever Nazi can't actually play chess. None of the pieces seem to make any sense. I bet this loser doesn't even know how to play the London. Such a nerd, I'm going to cut that bit out. Obviously, I understand what they're implying. This is a visual tool to suggest just how clever this guy is. His genius intellect allows him to pull all of the strings from the safety of his own hideout, a tactical mastermind if you will. I actually quite like Rathcone as a villain. The seriousness of his plans once again shine through, giving Captain America a good villain to fight against. It's mentioned that Rathcone was to become the new Führer of America should this plan go well, so we know that this is a pretty important guy. I don't find him completely compelling though. He fails to appreciate just how powerful Captain America is, and because of that he lets his plans completely unravel. I think I would have appreciated a little bit more caution in regards to the super agent. If we're supposed to believe that he is a tactical threat, I think Captain America should have appeared to be in more trouble for even just a smidge, right? The second villain that needs a shout out in this comic is the absolute Chad Strangler. This bloke is the nastiest Nazi to ever Nazi. I just think he's so funny. The way they've changed his lines to imitate the thickest German accent known to mankind makes it very entertaining for a bad guy. And I particularly like when he goes to meet Bucky and he dons his smartest attire. I know he's a Nazi, but you have to respect the fit a little bit. I was honestly a tad disappointed when I found out he never appeared again. What did I make of this storyline altogether though? I feel pretty ambivalent towards it if I'm honest. We got off to a great start with the first two adventures, but this one felt like it slowed the tempo down a little bit for me. Let me explain why. The storyline is good, but it feels like Captain America and Bucky only get to save the day out of luck. It doesn't speak much to Captain America's newfound incredible intellect. He puts Bucky in trouble with the first assassin, finds 2 people murdered but can't get to the bottom of the story. It's only when they're led directly to Rathgun's lair that they get to save the day. I think that takes a little bit out of the comic for me because I want the heroes to succeed out of their own strength and merit, rather than their enemies' mistakes. There are other parts of this comic that stood out to me and thoroughly deserve a mention. Why are they holding hands, man? I don't know how long I can ignore these allegations because I like this comic, but I'm on edge. Every source says that they're only 3 years apart, but just looking at the size difference between them, you can forgive me for sensing foul play. I know it's not, but surely when they were writing this, they must have thought it was a bit odd. Speaking of Bucky, I now get the chance to have a go at him for being a complete moron. I've said that I can't fully blame him because he is just a kid, but he does some really stupid things. In this adventure alone, he gets caught in his seconds away from death 3 separate times. I think comic book heroes need to have performance reviews brought in because surely that is a cause for concern. Maybe Cap just needs him around because it makes him look great whenever he saves him, but honestly he does just come across as quite pathetic. Moreover, he seems to have a magnetic field that acts on him to consistently walk into dangerous situations. When told to go on his own to an abandoned building where the killers are, he decides to do it without even telling Captain America. Like, what are you doing, my guy? And when the door slams behind him, he thinks, it's probably just the wind. It's like I'm watching the most infuriating pantomime whenever Bucky decides to wander off. I scream into the void, he's behind you, but no, he walks into it every time. I do love these fight scenes though. The pows, whams and bams from Cap in this story are immense. In this comic he truly establishes himself as a complete slugger. It's like taking candy from a useless sidekick for Cap as he bashes his way through every single Nazi assassin. It's not intellectual, but it's fun. That's what I like in a comic. It truly sets my nostalgia feelers tingling, just watching all these great sound effects from his fists. On to our final Captain America adventure, the first appearance of the iconic Red Skull. We start our comic on Lower Broadway. Rogers and Bucky are dropping off Major Croy at his house. They are all slightly on edge because of a note left by the dreaded Red Skull. The Major brushes them off. He doesn't seem too scared by the threat of the Red Skull. Why would he? The Red Skull's never been seen by anyone. Driving home, Steve shares with Bucky that he still thinks something bad is going to happen. Inside Major Croy's home, the Major picks out a book from his shelf and goes to settle in for the night. Sitting at his desk, he doesn't notice the terrifying figure sneaking in his window. Announcing his arrival, the sickening Red Skull speaks. "Good evening, my dear Major." Horror warps the Major's face, as within seconds the Red Skull's hands are wrapped around the Major's neck. The Red Skull commands the Major to stare into his eyes as he throttles the rest of the life out of the man. Standing over his now lifeless body, the Red Skull declares that this is the first of many. The police find his body later and note just how disturbing the scene is. It's like his corpse is staring at something unholy. The Red Skull perches on the windowsill outside, laughing at how stupid the police are. Killing the others will be so much easier now, he says to himself. Leaving the scene, Steve and Bucky immediately change into their costumes to go out hunting for the Red Skull. Captain America decides it's best for him to do it all on his own this time, telling Bucky to stay behind. Bucky, with teenage arrogance, isn't content to stay behind though. He goes out to find the Red Skull himself. We visit Red Skull in his lair, talking to his henchmen. He sets out the plan for them. Whilst the Red Skull is dealing with the higher-ranked military officials, he will send his goons to rob the National Bank. There is no room for failure. The consequences will be death for them. Bucky, trawling through the night, accidentally discovers the Red Skull's lair. He goes to escape his reconnaissance mission and to warn someone about their plans. But the roof he's standing on begins to crumble, and then entirely falls away, sending Bucky cascading towards the floor. He's found by one of the gangsters and tries to put up a fight, but he's unfortunately no match for the much bigger man. He's captured and thrown into the lair. The Red Skull immediately recognises the boy and changes his plans. They can hold him hostage, and then he will look into the Red Skull's face of death later. A knock at the door rings out. Captain America barrels through the door, sending the villains flying. Cap and Bucky immediately start brutalising the Nazis, punching and throwing them all around until they're all unconscious. In the midst of the fray, the Red Skull escapes through a secret exit. His plans will not be stopped just yet. Cap and Bucky once again don their everyday clothes back at the army base. They're called over by one of their sergeants and they fall into line. They're introduced to Mr. Maxson, the owner of the aircraft corporation. He's come in person to watch the first flight of one of his new planes. As it takes off, the squadron watches on, but the awe doesn't last for long. The plane catches fire and shoots towards the ground. It explodes, killing the men inside. Maxson watches on and remarks nonchalantly, "That was such a lovely plane." Steve is enraged. "What about those men who died in it?" He's quickly ordered to get back in line by his sergeant. Inside their tent, Bucky and Cap decide that something must be done about this obvious sabotage. Maxson and General Manor are escorted back to their residences. The General assures Maxson that the accident will be thoroughly investigated. Maxson wishes him a good night. We wouldn't want anything to happen to America's greatest military genius, would we? General Maxson retires to his office, but not before picking up a mystery package from his wife Mildred. The General opens the package and recoils in horror as he finds a Red Skull in the package with a note. "This is your last night on Earth, General Manor. Already death approaches you." The General brushes it off as a joke, perhaps not wanting to consider its truth, as the shadow of the Red Skull is imprinted on the wall behind him. Once again, the Red Skull leaps into action, wringing the neck of the General, staring into his open eyes, commanding him to look at death. The Red Skull crosses the General's name off his list. The next are Captain America and Bucky's. Mrs. Manor heard the kerfuffle inside the room and enters with a gun. "What have you done to my husband?" she screams. "You'll pay for this." But the Red Skull won't kill her. His death stare is only for important people. He sends her crashing to the floor with a great punch. Like an angry tornado, Captain America bursts into the room, spearing the Red Skull with a thunderous tackle. Captain America hits him so hard he lands in the next panel, but the villain gets back up again. Cap goes to dive into him again, but a ruthless chair shot knocks out the super agent instantly. Bucky looks through the window watching the scene. The Red Skull holds Cap's limp body and waits for him to wake up to look into his death stare to end his life. At the last possible moment, Bucky leaps through the window, kicking the Red Skull in the back, knocking him off balance. Cap, get up, quick," he urges. Cap shakes off his sleep and delivers an uppercut to the villain. With a huge effort, he unleashes his biggest punch and watches in amazement as it connects and cracks the skull, shattering it to pieces. Looking over the now unmasked villain, they find Mr. Maxson, the aeroplane designer. Bucky finds a hypodermic needle on the floor. It doesn't make any sense to him, but Cap solves the riddle. The Red Skull has been pretending to kill people with his glare, but instead it has just been a hypodermic needle. He's been trying to convince people he holds terrifying power to invoke more fear. Maxson goes to inject Captain, but is quickly stopped. He accidentally rolls straight over the needle, killing himself instantly. Bucky is shocked. Cap could have stopped it if he wanted to, but he just let it happen. He asks the Captain why, but he refuses to answer him. Captain calls the FBI and tells them the Red Skull has killed himself. Later, the police find the body of Maxson with a note tucked in his suit. It's a note from the Fuhrer. Whoever is in charge of the American industry will be rewarded if they aid the Nazis. The case is closed, and so is the deadly threat of the Red Skull, for now. Cap and Bucky relax after another job well done. Wow, and that rounds off the first ever Captain America comic. Where to begin? I've got to start by saying I love so many things about this storyline. I think the success of the story was riding on how the Red Skull came across, because he's featured so heavily in recent media that I had big expectations. Early on I went to dismiss him entirely when he enters with the goofiest entrance straight out of the Pink Panther. I thought, oh dear, another goofy villain, but hell was I wrong. When he slaughters the General at the beginning of this comic, and we get met with these slides, his horror becomes apparent. I haven't thought any of the villains look scary so far, so this was a great surprise. His brutality is incredible. I love his aura as a villain. Pretty much from this moment on, I was convinced that he was a great threat for Cap. The only thing that I don't understand is the way he kills people. His plan was to make the people who he was killing think they would die by looking into his eyes. But they'd be dead, right? What's the point of that? Why did he monologue to an unconscious Captain America? Some of his little actions just don't make sense to me, but undoubtedly, he is a very cool villain, and I understand why we need to give reader interesting plot lines to get into, but I'm just not sure that one entirely added up. The next big theme that pops up is the duality of Bucky. I've spoken about how he's useful and brilliant, as well as being a complete liability and utterly rubbish. That couldn't be more exemplified in this comic. When he's told to stay behind because Cap wants to go after the Red Skull himself, he throws a childish tantrum and goes, "Do you know what? I'm going to go after him anyway. Who cares what you think?" Which is brilliant, because once again he gets himself captured by the Red Skull and potentially causing himself to be used as a trap to get Captain America. He's bailed out without much harm, but he doesn't seem to realise just how much of a nuisance he's being. At the end of the comic though, he completely redeems himself. When Captain America's limp body is being held by the Red Skull just moments away from his death, Bucky comes to the rescue and saves the day. He's so polarising as a character that I can't help but cheer him on and scold him for being a moron at the same time. My initial notes for this comic read, Bucky is a freaking loose cannon, this guy has no concept of his actual skill set, but Bucky's also the world's freaking best detective and saves the day. And that sort of sums up who he is in this comic. I don't hate him as a character, and he's imprinted on my mind, so maybe he actually does his job as far as Simon and Kirby care. We need to talk about this last scene, because honestly, I'm a little shocked by all the crazy things that have happened here. Firstly, we get the reveal that Maxon is the man behind the Red Skull in a very Scooby-Doo-esque scene, with the mask splitting off to reveal his true identity. Now, this isn't the end for the Red Skull. He's revealed later on in comics to have just been a pawn working for the real Red Skull, but this reveal is still entertaining. I had no idea this was coming, if I'm honest, which is bad in the sense that this comic is meant for children, and obviously I'm so immensely mentally deficient that simple reveals are far beyond me, but anyway. I suppose I like the reveal because once again we get a good bit of mystery, coupled with some realistic villain motivation, a success once again for Simon and Kirby as far as I'm concerned. I'm intrigued by the chair shot that Captain America takes. It completely sparks him out, leaving him unconscious for minutes, only for him to say that he feels like he's been hit by a gunboat. Forgive me for my confusion, I've already explained that I'm obviously a bit slow, but we met Maxon before and he's just a wiry old man, definitely not capable of humbling the mighty super agent. So why does this happen? Is there an aura around the Red Skull that gives him an edge, or is it just a lucky shot? Either way, I find it mildly confusing. We see for the first moment here that Cap isn't invincible. It shows that he is perhaps a bit dependent on Bucky sometimes to save the day, and maybe even more so for guidance on moral decisions. This last bit is the bit that surprised me most. Steve lets the guy accidentally kill himself. That's dark as hell. I don't know how often superheroes advocate for death, but Mr. Goody Two-Shoes certainly wasn't on my list as one. This doesn't feel very Captain America to me. It's dark and brooding. Maybe this touches on a part of Steve that thinks sometimes to win the war bad things have to happen. Maybe he wanted to leave a message to others who might try and follow his path. It's really hard to tell, and I don't dislike it. I actually quite enjoyed the twist of it. It's just a confusing point. Overall, I like this adventure. I think it's a classic showcase of some of the adventures Cap is supposed to go on. It has a great villain, some awesome fight scenes, and a good bit of intrigue to get us coming back for more. Some honourable mentions from this genius. 1. Captain America hits this Nazi so hard he hits the Team Rocket blasting off again pose. Brilliant, love the fighting, it's awesome. Back at camp, Captain America smoking a pipe whilst Bucky plays the harmonica. I didn't realise this was Bilbo Baggins' 111th birthday party. Red Skull's power seems to be choking people while staring intently into their eyes. If the supervillain business goes bad, I'm sure there are plenty of people that will pay a lot for that sort of treatment. This Red Skull comic was littered with things that I thought were brilliant, but that kind of sums it up. So let's move on to the last part of the video where we grade how well this comic went down with me. So here it is. I wanted to give these comics a grading system to try and give them an accurate rating as to how much I like the comic and to be able to compare them in the future. So for this one, I give the heroes a 5 out of 10. I know, it seems a bit harsh. I do love this comic book, but the heroes lack a little bit for me. I love Captain's fighting style and the villains he's fighting against, but he isn't really that super. He's got some extra strength and supposedly some extra intelligence, but sadly nothing that makes him massively super. The heroes are really brought down by Bucky's involvement for me. I love him sometimes, but he drives me up the wall at every other point. Overall, they're underwhelming, but I am invested into finding out where they evolve at, as characters at least. The storyline. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. I really unapologetically enjoyed this comic. I thought it got a little bit rocky in the middle with Rathcone's odd chess crap, but other than that it was solid all the way through. I feel like all of the villains in the story have serious enough motives that lead me to believe that every piece of Cap and Bucky's involvement is a step towards saving the US. I want to give the villains an 8 out of 10. I think they're fantastic. Obviously, who doesn't love a bit of Nazi-bopping? They're obviously the ultimate goon to have a go at. But her Strangler, Rathcone has some good moments, and the Red Skull, it's just like brilliant. I mean, I really enjoyed it. There's even some good moments from Sando and Omar as well. So you're really all together. I'm spotting good villain motivation and enticing storylines that I can sense their threat, and it does make Captain America seem much better, I have to say that. And from my enjoyability, it's an 8 out of 10. Like I said at the beginning, I feel like I'm rooting to become an American here. There's something about it that just feels so patriotic, and I think that's kind of what Simon and Kirby are going for, this hoorah spirit, getting into it. But I'm encapsulated by it. I really love the storylines that Simon and Kirby have created. They're really fantastic, and the bright colours, definitely with the American big symbols as well, it's really done wonders for me. So all in all, I'd say I've really enjoyed it. I think that averages out to about a 7. It was really good. I would say give it a read for yourself and tell me what you think. So that kind of sums it up here for Comics with Clark. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have done, please give the video a like or subscribe. It means quite a lot to me, so thanks for that. If you've got any ideas about which superhero you'd like to see next, let me know. Okay, bye.